Hi, my name is Chris Badel, and I'm with the Kansas Department of Agriculture's Division of Water Resources. I'm going to go over the informational material that was included with the Chief Engineer's September 30, 2019 letter describing the planned water right administration related to the impairment of Quivira National Wildlife Refuge. The letter also discusses opportunities for flexibility designed to help water users adjust to operating under the planned administration. Let's start with the map. Using the Big Bend Groundwater Management District No. 5 groundwater model, we have determined how much of the groundwater that would have eventually ended up as stream flow is instead intercepted by groundwater pumping in each section. Zone A, in red, defines the area where 10% or more of pumping comes from intercepted stream flow. Zone B, in green, defines the area where 20% or more of pumping comes from intercepted stream flow, and Zone C, in yellow, defines the area where 30% or more of pumping comes from intercepted stream flow. The map also shows, in the legend, that we plan to start administering the water rights closest to the stream where pumping has the relatively greatest and most immediate effect on stream flow. We plan to administer only the water rights in Zone C in 2020. Water rights in Zone B will be added to the administration in 2021, and Zone A will be added in 2022. Now let's turn to the other two documents that were sent. First, there is the Summary of Allocations and Comparisons with Historical Use. This report has a lot of information on it, and I'm going to step through each part of it. The other document is a guide that summarizes the information presented in the summary report. Let's turn back to the report. This report was generated and mailed to each water right owner and water use correspondent for water rights that are affected by the planned administration. The report includes information on all water rights that are owned or controlled by the person, business, or municipality listed in the name section at the very top of the report. The report is arranged in two tables. Table 1, on top, summarizes the information in Table 2 by administration zone. Table 2, below, presents the detailed information for each water right. Both tables have three sections. The For Administration Allocation section presents information about how the planned water right administration will affect allowable pumping. The For WCA section presents information useful when considering enrollment in a water conservation area, or WCA. And the For Reference section presents information to help evaluate the effects of the planned administration by comparing the planned administered allocations with the water rights authorized quantities and historical use. The first column of Table 1 shows which administration zones are being summarized. An administration zone is added each year. Column 2 is the year that the planned administration will take effect. Column 3 is the sum of all the administered allocations by administration zone. In this example, the first row is the sum of all the allocations for the water rights in Zone C. Row 2 is the sum of all the allocations for the water rights in Zone C and in Zone B, and row 3 adds Zone A. Column 4 is the sum of all of the authorized quantities of the water rights by administration zone. Like in Column 3, row 1 is for Zone C, row 2 adds Zone B, and row 3 adds Zone A. Column 5 shows the total administered allocation as a percentage of the total authorized quantity by administration zone. Again, each row below adds the water rights shown in the zones in Column 1. Moving into the For WCA section, Column 6 reports the average stream response for all the water rights by administration zone. In this example, when taken all together, about 47% of the water pumped by the water rights in Zone C comes from intercepted stream flow. Like in the other summaries, each row below adds the water rights in those administration zones shown in Column 1. We envision that participants in the WCA will be able to move and transfer allocations. In order to do this while keeping the impact to the stream neutral, we need to do some math using the administered allocation and the stream response to make sure the allocation at the new location doesn't cause more impact to the stream. Column 7 shows what a multi-year allocation would be under the WCA plan that we are working on with local stakeholders. In this case, water rights in Zone C would be able to sum their allocations, multiply that sum by 5 for the number of years that the water rights would be enrolled in the WCA, and have the flexibility to use that lump sum quantity of water over the term of the WCA as long as no individual water right exceeds its authorized quantity. We envision that the WCA will last for 5 years, ending in 2024. If water rights are enrolled in the WCA the year they are administered, this will allow 5 times the allocations for the water rights enrolled in the year 2020 to use over 5 years, 4 times the allocations for the water rights enrolled in 2021 to use over 4 years, and 3 times the allocations for the water rights enrolled in 2022 to use over 3 years. Let's look at how this works by looking at row 2 of this column. It shows that 5 times the allocations in Zone C plus 4 times the allocations in Zone B equals 10,435 acre-feet to use through 2024. As I mentioned earlier, we envision that participants in the WCA will be able to move allocation among water rights. When that happens, the allocations reported in column 7 will change accordingly, increasing in quantity if the allocation is moved away from the stream to a section with a lower stream response, and decreasing in quantity if the allocation is moved closer to the stream to a section with greater stream response. More about how this works is covered in another presentation video. Column 8 shows what the average reported water use was over 2009 to 2018 for the water rights by administration zone. Column 9 compares the historical use over 2009 to 2018 as a percentage of the authorized quantity. The average for the whole affected region is about 76%, so we can see that these water rights are being used a little more than average. And column 10 shows the administered allocations as a percentage of historical use. This compares what will be available under the planned administration with what has been used recently. Let's look at the first row of this column. It shows that for the water rights in Zone C, the administered allocation represents about a 21.4% reduction from historical use. That's 1 minus 78.6% equals 21.4%. As Zone B and A are added, that percentage reduction from historical use goes down to about 16% in 2022 when all zones are being administered. Because allocations are based solely on priority and authorized quantity, for some water users, this number may be greater than 100%. This can happen when a water user has a relatively senior water right and has used it relatively conservatively. We envision that if a water user participates in the planned WCA and is allocated more water than they need to operate, they could trade or sell their unneeded allocation to another WCA participant. Moving on to Table 2. The Table 2 rows are shaded to distinguish between the administration zones. Column A shows the water right file number, also known as the priority number. Column B reports whether the entity named at the top of the report owns the water right, that would be an O, is the water use correspondent, that would be a W, or is both. Column C shows what administration zone the water right is in and when it will start to be administered. Column D shows the planned administered allocation. This is the amount of water that will be allowed to be used annually when this water right is being administered, except when the water right is enrolled in the proposed WCA, in which case the water right would be allocated a multiple of this allocation to use over several years. More about how the allocations are determined is covered in another presentation video. Column E shows the water rights base authorized quantity. It is important to note that the planned administration will not change the original water right, but rather will add a restriction to use of the water because of the impairment. Column F shows how the planned administered allocation compares to the water rights base authorized quantity. In the for WCA section, column G shows the stream response where this water right is located. Again, this is the portion of pumping that comes from intercepting water that would have been stream flow. We'll use this information to ensure that any transfers of allocation don't take more water from the stream. Column H shows what a multi-year allocation quantity in the proposed WCA would look like for this water right, and how long the term of the WCA would be if the water right was enrolled when it was administered. In the for reference section, columns I through K show the average use over 2009 to 2018, that average use over 2009 to 2018 as a percentage of the base water rights authorized quantity, and in column K, the administered allocation as a percentage of the 2009 to 2018 historical use. As I mentioned above, in some cases, this number can be greater than 100%. Let's look at row 3. In column A, we see that this water right has a priority number in the 15,000s, which is relatively senior. In column E, we see that the authorized quantity for this water right is 221 acre-feet. In column I, we see that the average use over 2009 to 2018 is about 161 acre-feet per year. That's about 73% of this water right's authorized quantity, as shown in column J. As I mentioned earlier, for the whole affected area, about 1,380 water rights, the average use is about 76% of authorized quantity. So we can say that this water right has been used relatively conservatively. So the combination of a relatively senior water right and relatively conservative water use has resulted in this water right being allocated more than its historical use. Row 6 shows how it works the other way too. Its 39,000 priority number in column A is relatively junior, and its historical use is well above average, at about 91% of its authorized quantity, as we can see in column J. The result is that this water rights allocation will be about 42% less than its historical use. One more feature of this section, if there are rows grouped together, like the top 2 rows in this example, that means that these water rights are overlapped in either point of diversion, place of use, or both. And so these references apply to the overlapped groups of water rights. That's the end of this informational presentation. Thank you for your attention.